How can one word at the altar destroy everything you've built and leave you holding the envelope that proves you were never in control? When I said not yet, just to watch him squirm, I thought I'd won the crowd. I never expected he'd hand me the one thing that could end it all, right there in front of everyone. The words slipped out of my mouth like poison disguised as honey. Not yet. I watched 300 wedding guests freeze in their seats, their champagne glasses halfway to their lips, their smiles melting into confusion. The officiant's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into his receding hairline. My soon-to-be husband Jonah stood there in his perfectly pressed navy suit, his face cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. But I wasn't done with my performance. I said, letting my voice carry across the silent courtyard of the old city hall. Shouldn't we make sure he's really ready for this? I turned to face our guests with a theatrical smile, my white dress rustling in the autumn breeze. After all, marriage is forever, right? A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. My mother, Harriet, threw back her head and laughed like I'd just delivered the punchline of the century. "That's my Eris," she called out, raising her glass. "Always keeping things interesting." My brother Julian shifted uncomfortably in the front row, his wife Sarah gripping his arm with white knuckles. Behind them, I could see Jonah's mother Lenore, her face the color of ash, her mouth pressed into a thin line that could have cut glass. "Eris," Jonah said quietly, his voice barely audible over the murmur of confused guests. "What are you doing?" I turned back to him, drinking in the moment. This was exactly what I wanted. Everyone's eyes on me, everyone wondering what wild, unpredictable Eris Vane would do next. I'd been planning this little stunt for weeks, imagining how it would look on social media, how people would talk about it for years to come. The bride, who made her groom sweat at the altar. "I'm just making sure you're absolutely certain," I said, reaching out to straighten his tie with exaggerated care. You've been so distant lately, working all those late nights. A girl has to wonder if her man is really committed." That was rich, coming from me. But Jonah didn't know about the text messages I'd been exchanging with Silas Park, his former college roommate. He didn't know about the lunch dates that stretched into dinner, or the way Silas made me feel alive in ways Jonah never could with his spreadsheets and quiet evenings at home. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Jonah said, and something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. His brown eyes, usually so warm and patient, seemed different somehow, harder. "The question is whether you are." "Of course I am, silly," I laughed, playing to the crowd again. "I just wanted to see you squirm a little. You're so serious all the time." The officiant cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could continue with the ceremony." "Yes," I said, beaming at Jonah. "Let's make this official." But as the officiant began to speak again, Jonah reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across it in his careful handwriting. "What's that?" I whispered, suddenly feeling less confident about my little performance. "A wedding gift," he said, pressing it into my hands, "for when you're ready to be honest." The envelope felt heavier than it should have, and something cold settled in my stomach. But the officiant was speaking again, asking if I, Eris Moss, took Jonah Vane to be my lawfully wedded husband, and the moment passed. "I do," I said, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. When Jonah kissed me, sealing our marriage with polite applause from our guests, I felt the envelope crumple slightly between us. Whatever was inside, whatever Jonah thought he knew, I'd deal with it later. Right now, I had a reception to enjoy and a reputation as the most entertaining bride in the city to maintain. But as we walked back down the aisle together, Jonah's hand firmly gripping mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that my little joke had somehow backfired in ways I didn't yet understand. The reception was held in the courtyard behind the city hall, strung with white lights and filled with round tables covered in ivory linens. I made my rounds, accepting congratulations and laughing off questions about my altar hesitation. "You always were dramatic," my college friend Beth said, hugging me tight. Poor Jonah looked like he was going to pass out. "He needs to lighten up," I replied, scanning the crowd for my new husband. I spotted him near the bar, talking quietly with his best man David. Even from across the courtyard, I could see the tension in Jonah's shoulders. "Eris, darling." My mother appeared at my elbow, slightly tipsy from champagne. "That was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You had everyone on the edge of their seats." "Thanks, Mom." I tucked the envelope deeper into the hidden pocket of my dress. I thought it would be fun to shake things up a little. "Your father would have loved it," she said, her eyes growing misty. "He always said you were born to be the center of attention." But when I looked around the reception, I noticed that not everyone seemed charmed by my performance. Lenore was sitting with a group of Jonah's relatives, their heads bent together in what looked like serious conversation. Julian kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. And our 6-year-old daughter Cass, from my previous relationship, was clinging to Jonah's leg, looking confused and overwhelmed. "Mommy," Cass said when I approached, "why did you say not yet? I thought you wanted to marry Daddy Jonah." Jonah's jaw tightened at the question, and he lifted Cass into his arms. "Sometimes grown-ups make jokes that don't come out right," he said carefully. "Your mom was just being silly." "But you looked sad," Cass persisted, touching his cheek with her small hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Jonah said, though his eyes met mine over her head with an expression that was anything but fine. "Why don't you go get some cake?" As the evening wore on, I found myself checking my phone obsessively. Silas had texted earlier to congratulate me, adding a winking emoji that made my heart race. "Hope the groom knows what he's getting into," his message read. "Can't wait to hear all about it." I typed back quickly, "It was perfect. Wish you could have been here." His response came immediately. "Me too. Dinner tomorrow? I want to hear everything." I deleted the message thread and slipped my phone back into my purse, but not before noticing that Jonah was watching me from across the dance floor. When our eyes met, he raised his glass in what might have been a toast, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. The envelope in my pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric of my dress. Part of me wanted to tear it open right there, to see what Jonah thought he knew about my honesty. But another part of me was afraid of what I might find inside. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, I finally cornered Jonah near the coat check. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "are you going to tell me what's in the envelope, or do I have to guess?" "Open it when you're ready," he said, straightening his tie. "Like I said, it's for when you want to be honest." "Honest about what?" I demanded, but he was already walking away, Cass's hand in his, heading toward the parking lot. I stood there in my wedding dress, surrounded by the detritus of our reception, empty champagne glasses and wilted flowers, and felt the first real flicker of fear. Whatever game I thought I was playing, it was becoming clear that Jonah had been playing a different one entirely. And somehow, I had the sinking feeling that he was winning. 3 weeks after the wedding, I'd almost convinced myself that the envelope was nothing more than a love letter Jonah had written in a moment of romantic inspiration. It sat unopened in my jewelry box, buried beneath tangled necklaces and forgotten earrings, while I threw myself into the routine of married life with renewed enthusiasm. Well, the appearance of married life anyway. Our apartment was a study in careful neutrality, beige walls, coordinated furniture, everything in its proper place. Jonah had always been organized to the point of obsession, and I'd learned to navigate around his systems rather than challenge them. His home office was off limits, his desk arranged with military precision, his computer password protected like he was guarding state secrets instead of IT consulting files. "I'm working late again tonight," Jonah announced over breakfast, not looking up from his tablet where he was scrolling through what looked like legal documents. "More database migrations?" I asked, spreading jam on my toast with studied casualness. The truth was, his late nights had become a convenient cover for my own activities. "Something like that." His tone was clipped, professional. Don't wait up. Cass looked between us, her spoon suspended halfway to her mouth. Are you fighting? No, sweetheart, I said quickly. Daddy Jonah just has a lot of work right now. But even as I said it, I could feel the distance between us growing wider. Jonah had been different since the wedding. Polite but cold, present but somehow absent. He slept on his side of the bed without touching me, spoke to me with the same tone he used for grocery store clerks, and had stopped asking about my day entirely, which made it easier to lie about where I spent my evenings. Eris, you're glowing, my co-worker Madison said as I settled into my cubicle at the insurance office where I worked as an administrator. Marriage suits you. Thanks, I said, checking my phone for messages. Silas had texted, lunch today? I found that new place you wanted to try. My heart did a little skip as I typed back, yes, meet you at noon. Who's got you smiling like that? Madison peered over the partition between our desks, her eyes bright with curiosity. Just a friend, I said, but I could feel heat rising in my cheeks. The truth was, Silas Park had become the highlight of my days. Where Jonah was methodical and predictable, Silas was spontaneous and charming. He remembered details about conversations we'd had weeks ago, sent me funny memes that made me laugh out loud at work, and had a way of making me feel like the most interesting woman in the room. You know, Madison said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. My sister went through this phase after her wedding, said married life felt too settled, too boring. She started taking salsa dancing lessons. Did it help? I asked, though I was only half listening. My phone buzzed with another text from Silas. Can't wait to see you. Wear that blue dress I like. Well, she ended up divorced, Madison said cheerfully, but she's a fantastic dancer now. At lunch, I met Silas at a trendy bistro downtown, far enough from my office that I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. He was already seated when I arrived, his dark hair perfectly tousled, his smile lighting up his face when he saw me. There's my favorite married woman, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. The contact sent electricity through my entire body. Don't say it like that, I protested, though I was smiling. People will get the wrong idea. Would that be so terrible? He asked, pulling out my chair with exaggerated gallantry. We'd been dancing around this conversation for months, ever since we'd reconnected at a mutual friend's birthday party. Silas had been Jonah's roommate in college, but they'd drifted apart after graduation. When I'd mentioned that I was engaged to Jonah, Silas had raised his eyebrows in surprise. Jonah Vane? Really? He'd said. I mean, he's a good guy, but are you sure he can keep up with you? The question had lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. Was Jonah enough for me? Did he appreciate my spontaneous nature, my need for excitement and adventure? Or was he just comfortable with the status quo? Tell me about married life, Silas said now, leaning forward with interest. Is it everything you dreamed it would be? I paused, twirling pasta around my fork. It's fine. Good. Jonah's a good husband. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. He's just so serious all the time, I found myself saying. Everything has to be planned and organized. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. Silas reached across the table and covered my hand with his. You're too vibrant for that kind of life, Eris. You need someone who appreciates your fire. The contact of his skin against mine was electric, and I didn't pull away. We should probably talk about something else. Should we? His thumb traced across my knuckles. Or should we talk about what's really happening here? I knew what he meant. The tension between us had been building for weeks, fed by long lunches, late-night text conversations, and the growing distance between Jonah and me. I told myself it was harmless, just friendship, just attention from someone who appreciated me for who I really was. But when Silas suggested we continue our conversation at his loft downtown, I didn't say no. His apartment was everything mine wasn't. Exposed brick walls, abstract art, an unmade bed visible through an open doorway. It felt dangerous and exciting, like stepping into a different version of my life. I should go, I said, but I didn't move from where I was standing in his living room. Should you? Silas moved closer, his hands settling on my waist. Or should you stay and tell me what you really want? When he kissed me, I felt like I was waking up from a long sleep. This was what I'd been missing: passion, spontaneity, the thrill of being wanted by someone who saw me as more than just a wife and stepmother. Afterward, lying in his arms while the afternoon sun slanted through his windows, I felt more alive than I had in months. This was who I really was. Not the organized, predictable woman Jonah wanted me to be, but someone wild and free and desirable. I should feel guilty, I said, tracing patterns on Silas's chest. But you don't, he said, and it wasn't a question. No, I admitted, I don't. That evening, I came home to find Jonah in his study, surrounded by papers and file folders. He looked up when I entered, his expression unreadable. How was work? He asked. Fine, I said, hyper-aware of how my voice sounded. Busy day, you? Productive. He turned back to his papers, effectively dismissing me. I wanted to ask what he was working on, why he needed so many files for database consulting, but something in his posture warned me off. Instead, I went to check on Cass, who was in her room playing with dolls. Mummy, she said when I sat on her bed, why doesn't Daddy Jonah smile anymore? The question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, sweetheart? He used to smile all the time, she said, making her doll walk across the comforter. Before the wedding, now he looks sad. He's just stressed about work, I said, but even as I spoke the words, I wondered if that was really true. Had Jonah changed, or had I just stopped paying attention? That night, as I lay in bed listening to Jonah's even breathing beside me, I thought about the envelope in my jewelry box. Whatever was inside, whatever Jonah thought he knew, it couldn't be that serious. He was probably just hurt about my altar joke, maybe feeling insecure about our relationship. I'd make it up to him somehow. But first, I had lunch plans with Silas tomorrow and a text conversation to delete from my phone. The next morning, I woke to find Jonah already gone. A note on the kitchen counter saying he'd be out of town for a client meeting. But when I went to get dressed, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. His laptop was missing from his study. His filing cabinet, usually locked, stood slightly ajar. And on his desk, in his careful handwriting, was a list of phone numbers I didn't recognize, next to the words, Consultation Phase 2. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt genuinely afraid. Whatever Jonah was planning, it was bigger than I'd imagined, and I had the terrible feeling that I was running out of time to figure out what it was. The rumors started small, like they always do. A whispered conversation by the coffee machine, a knowing glance across the office break room, a carefully casual question about how married life was treating me. So, Beth said, sliding into the chair across from me at our usual cafe, I heard the most interesting story about your wedding. I looked up from my latte, trying to keep my expression neutral. Oh, really? What kind of story? Well, apparently someone recorded your little not yet moment and posted it online. Beth pulled out her phone and showed me a video that made my stomach drop. It's got over 50,000 views. The video was shaky and the audio was poor, but there I was in my white dress, playing to the crowd while Jonah stood frozen beside me. In the harsh light of social media, my performance looked less charming and more cruel. The comments below were brutal. Poor guy looks like he wants to disappear. Red flag much? Run, dude, run. This is why I'm never getting married. I can't believe this is online, I said, though part of me felt a thrill at the attention. 50,000 people had watched my moment. I was internet famous, even if it wasn't exactly the kind of fame I'd imagined. It gets better, Beth said, scrolling down. Apparently someone recognized you and posted your name. Now there are whole threads dissecting your relationship. She showed me a Reddit post titled, Bride Humiliates Groom at Altar. Anyone know the full story? The comments were a mix of speculation and judgment, with several people claiming to know details about my marriage. "This is insane," I said, but I couldn't stop reading. One comment in particular caught my attention. "I work with her. Trust me, the husband is better off without her. She's always talking about how boring he is." My blood ran cold. Someone from my office was posting about me online. "You know what this means, right?" Beth leaned forward conspiratorially. "You're officially a meme, the not yet bride. I saw someone already making jokes about it on Twitter." Over the next few days, the attention only intensified. My co-workers started treating me differently, some with newfound respect for my boldness, others with barely concealed disapproval. Madison, who'd always been friendly, now watched me with calculating eyes. "So," she said during our lunch break, "is it true what they're saying online about you and your husband having problems?" "We're fine," I said firmly, though even as I spoke, I knew it wasn't true. Jonah had been gone for 3 days on his mysterious client meeting, communicating only through brief professional text messages. "Because someone posted that they saw you having lunch with a very attractive man who definitely wasn't your husband," Madison continued, "multiple times." My heart started racing. "I have lunch with lots of people. It's called having friends." "Of course," Madison said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure it's completely innocent." But the damage was done. I could feel the weight of speculation following me everywhere I went. At the grocery store, I caught the cashier staring at me with recognition. At Cass's school pickup, other parents whispered behind their hands. Even my own family was starting to ask questions. "Eris, honey," my mother said when I called her, "Julian showed me some things online. People are saying terrible things about you." "It's just internet gossip, Mom. You know how people are." "But is there any truth to it? About you and Jonah having problems?" I found myself deflecting, making excuses, painting Jonah as distant and unsupportive. "He's been working constantly," I said. "Sometimes I wonder if he even wants to be married." "Well, I never thought he was exciting enough for you," Harriet said. "You need someone who appreciates your spirit." It was exactly what I wanted to hear, validation for the growing resentment I felt toward my husband. But even as my mother's words soothed my ego, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was digging myself into a hole I might not be able to climb out of. The situation got worse when I ran into Lenore at the supermarket. Jonah's mother had always been polite but distant with me, and now she looked at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "Eris," she said coolly, blocking my path with her shopping cart. "How nice to see you." "Hi, Lenore. How are you?" "Concerned," she said bluntly, "about my son, and about Cass." "What do you mean?" "I mean that little stunt you pulled at your wedding has people talking. And not in a good way." Her voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. "Jonah is a good man. He doesn't deserve to be humiliated." "It was just a joke," I protested, but the words sounded weak even to me. Was it? Because from where I was sitting, it looked like cruelty disguised as humor. Lenore's eyes were ice cold. And if the rumors I'm hearing are true, it was just the beginning. "What rumors?" "You know exactly what rumors." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you're not happy in your marriage, have the decency to end it before you destroy my son's reputation along with your own." She wheeled her cart away, leaving me standing in the cereal aisle, with my heart pounding and my hands shaking. How much did she know? How much did anyone know? That evening, Silas called while I was making dinner for Cass. "I've been thinking about you," he said, his voice warm and intimate through the phone. "When can I see you again?" "I don't know," I said, glancing toward Cass, who was coloring at the kitchen table. "Things are complicated right now." "Because of the video?" "I saw it. You looked amazing, by the way. Very dramatic." "It's not funny, Silas. People are talking. Let them talk. You're not doing anything wrong." But I was, and we both knew it. The lunches had turned into afternoon visits to his loft. The innocent text messages had become explicit conversations that I deleted as soon as I read them. I was having an affair, even if I couldn't bring myself to use that word. I should probably lay low for a while, I said. Or, Silas said, you could stop caring what other people think and start living your life. After I hung up, I found Cass watching me with worried eyes. Mommy, when is Daddy Jonah coming home? Soon, sweetheart, I said, though I had no idea if that was true. His text messages had become increasingly sparse, and when I'd tried calling, he'd sent me straight to voicemail. I miss him, Cass said quietly. He reads me better bedtime stories than you do. The comment stung more than it should have. Even my 6-year-old daughter preferred Jonah to me. That night, alone in our apartment with Cass asleep in her room, I finally retrieved the envelope from my jewelry box. It felt heavier than before, more ominous. Whatever was inside had been waiting for weeks, and I was starting to think I couldn't avoid it much longer. But as I held it in my hands, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the video, Karma's coming for you. I deleted it immediately, but 3 more messages followed from different numbers, all variations on the same theme. Someone was actively trying to intimidate me, and I had no idea who or why. I put the envelope back in the jewelry box, unopened. Whatever Jonah's surprise was, I wasn't ready to face it. Not when my world was already spinning out of control. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to the silence of our empty apartment, I couldn't shake Lenore's words. If you're not happy in your marriage, have the decency to end it. The problem was, I was beginning to realize that the marriage might be ending whether I wanted it to or not. And I was starting to suspect that Jonah had been planning for that possibility long before I was ready to admit it to myself. The photograph appeared on a Tuesday morning, posted to a local gossip blog with the headline, Not Yet Bride Steps Out with Mystery Man. It was grainy and taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking my face or Silas's profile as we sat at a corner table at the bistro downtown, his hand covering mine across the white tablecloth. I stared at my computer screen in horror, my coffee growing cold as I read the comments below. Someone had recognized both of us, posting our names, and speculating about the nature of our relationship. Within hours, it had been shared across multiple social media platforms. Eris, my supervisor, Karen, appeared at my cubicle with a grim expression. I need to see you in my office. The walk across the open floor felt like a death march. I could feel every pair of eyes following me, hear the whispers that stopped abruptly when I passed. Madison gave me a sympathetic look that felt more like pity than support. Sit down, Karen said, closing her door behind us. I think you know why you're here. If this is about the photo, it's about the fact that your personal life is becoming a distraction in the workplace, Karen interrupted. I've had 3 clients ask if you're the woman from that wedding video. Our receptionist fielded 5 calls yesterday from people wanting to know if you work here. I can't control what people post online. No, but you can control your behavior. Karen leaned back in her chair, studying me. The company has a reputation to maintain. We can't have employees becoming internet celebrities for the wrong reasons. So, what are you saying? I'm saying you need to clean this up. Fast, before it affects your employment here. I left Karen's office feeling like the walls were closing in. The attention I'd craved was turning toxic, and I had no idea how to stop it. Worse, I still hadn't heard from Jonah, who'd been gone for almost a week now, with no explanation beyond client work. When I got home that evening, I found Cass sitting on the couch with her backpack still on, looking lost and small. Hey, sweetheart, I said, sitting beside her. How was school? Emma's mum wouldn't let me come over for a play date, she said quietly. She said she needed to talk to you first, but then she never called. My heart sank. The gossip was affecting my daughter now, marking her as the child of the woman who'd become a local scandal. Maybe we can arrange something for next week, I said, though I doubted Emma's mother would be calling anytime soon. Mummy, are you and Daddy Jonah getting divorced? The question hit me like a physical blow. Why would you ask that? Because Tommy's parents got divorced, and first his dad moved out and then everyone at school knew about it. Cass's eyes filled with tears. And Daddy Jonah's been gone forever, and you look sad all the time. I pulled her into my arms, feeling like the worst mother in the world. We're not getting divorced, baby. Daddy Jonah is just working a lot right now. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Jonah's absence felt different this time, not like a business trip, but like an escape. And I was starting to understand that I might have pushed him too far. That night, after Cass was asleep, I finally worked up the courage to call Jonah directly, instead of just texting. To my surprise, he answered on the second ring. Eris. His voice was calm, professional, like he was talking to a client rather than his wife. Where are you? I asked. Cass is asking questions, and I don't know what to tell her. Tell her I'll be home soon. When is soon? It's been almost a week. I'm wrapping up some business. I should be back by the weekend. There was something in his tone that made me nervous. What kind of business, Jonah? You've never been this secretive about work before. A long pause. Haven't I? What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe we've both been keeping secrets, Eris. The difference is mine are legal. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in shock. He knew. Somehow Jonah knew about Silas, about the lunches and the afternoon visits to his loft. But how much did he know? And what was he planning to do about it? I tried calling back, but he'd turned off his phone. Panic rising in my chest, I did something I'd been putting off for weeks. I opened his laptop, which he'd left behind in his study. It was password protected, but I knew Jonah well enough to guess. His passwords were always some variation of important dates or names. I tried Cass's birthday, our anniversary, his mother's maiden name. Nothing worked. Then, on impulse, I tried Not Yet Bride, and the screen unlocked. My blood ran cold. If that was his password, he'd been planning this for longer than I'd imagined. The desktop was organized with typical Jonah efficiency, but what I found there made my hands shake. Folders labeled Legal Consultation, Financial Records, Evidence Documentation, and most chilling of all, Custody Preparation. I clicked on the evidence folder and found screenshots of text messages. My text messages with Silas, somehow recovered, even though I'd deleted them. Photos of us together that I'd never seen before, taken from angles that suggested surveillance. Bank records showing charges at restaurants and hotels that corresponded exactly with our meetings. But it was the legal consultation folder that made me feel sick. Jonah had been meeting with divorce attorneys for months, getting advice on how to protect his assets and secure custody of Cass. There were emails discussing strategy, timelines, and the importance of documenting adultery and public humiliation as grounds for divorce. One email, sent just 2 days after our wedding, made my vision blur. Client reports spouse's erratic behavior escalating. Alter incident captured on video provides evidence of emotional instability. Recommend continued documentation while client secures financial assets and prepares custody case. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Jonah hadn't been distant because he was hurt or confused. He'd been distant because he was building a case against me, methodically documenting every mistake I'd made while I'd been too caught up in my affair to notice. The envelope, the wedding envelope that I'd never opened, that had been sitting in my jewelry box for weeks like a time bomb. With shaking hands, I retrieved it and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, dated the morning of our wedding, written in Jonah's careful script. Eris, by the time you read this, you'll know that I've been aware of your relationship with Silas for several months. I hired a private investigator after I found the first deleted text messages on your phone. I know about the lunches, the visits to his apartment, the lies you've told me and everyone else. I gave you this envelope at our wedding because I wanted to give you one last chance to be honest with me, to end whatever this is and try to make our marriage work. But knowing you as I do, I suspect you'll only open this when it's too late to matter. I love you, Eris. I love Cass. But I won't be humiliated anymore, and I won't let you destroy what's left of our family's reputation. When you're ready to face the truth, call me. We'll discuss terms. Jonah. I read the letter 3 times before the full impact hit me. Jonah had known everything, had known it on our wedding day, had stood there and married me anyway while planning his exit strategy. The altar joke, the envelope, my affair with Silas, it had all been part of some elaborate chess game that I'd been too blind to see I was playing. My phone buzzed with a text from Silas. "Miss you. When can I see you again?" For the first time since our affair began, the message didn't thrill me. Instead, it felt like evidence in a case that was already being built against me. I deleted it without responding, but I knew it was too late. If Jonah had been monitoring my communications for months, he already had everything he needed. I spent the rest of the night pacing our apartment, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation, but every scenario I imagined ended the same way, with me losing everything I'd taken for granted: my marriage, my home, my reputation, and worst of all, my relationship with Cass. By morning, I'd made a decision. I would end things with Silas immediately, delete all evidence of our affair, and beg Jonah for forgiveness. I would be the perfect wife, prove that I could change, show him that our marriage was worth saving. But when I called Silas to arrange a meeting, he had news that shattered what little hope I had left. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "My wife found out about us. She's threatening to go public with everything unless I pay her off." "Your wife?" The words came out as a croak. "Silas, you told me you were divorced." "Separated," he corrected. "It's complicated." Jesus Christ! I sank into a chair, the full scope of my stupidity finally hitting me. How did she find out? "Someone sent her photos, professional quality, like they were taken by a private investigator." Jonah. Of course it was Jonah. He'd been playing a game I didn't even know existed, moving pieces into place while I'd been congratulating myself on my cleverness. "What do we do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We? There is no we, Eris. I'm cutting my losses and getting out of town. You should do the same." The line went dead, and I realized that Silas, charming, exciting Silas, who'd made me feel so alive, was abandoning me at the first sign of real trouble. I was completely alone, facing the consequences of choices I'd made while thinking I was in control. That evening, Jonah came home. He walked through the door like he'd never been gone, kissed Cass on the forehead, and began making dinner as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and we both knew it. "We need to talk," I said after Cass had gone to bed. "Yes," he agreed, settling into his chair across from me at the kitchen table. "We do." I opened the envelope. "I figured you would, eventually." "Jonah, Don't." His voice was quiet but firm. "Don't apologize. Don't make excuses. Don't try to explain. We both know what you've done, and we both know it's over." "It doesn't have to be. I'll end it with Silas. I'll do whatever you want." "You already ended it with Silas," Jonah said calmly. "His wife called me this morning. Apparently, he's decided to relocate to avoid the scandal." The casual way he delivered the information told me everything I needed to know about how thoroughly he'd orchestrated this situation. Silas hadn't abandoned me. He'd been driven away, just another move in Jonah's carefully planned endgame. "So what happens now?" I asked. Jonah reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Now you decide whether you want to do this the easy way or the hard way." He slid the folder across the table to me. Inside were divorce papers, custody agreements, and a financial settlement that would leave me with almost nothing. But it was the final document that made my blood run cold. A restraining order that would prevent me from discussing our marriage or divorce publicly, with severe financial penalties for any violation. You're trying to silence me, I said. I'm trying to protect what's left of our family's dignity, Jonah replied, and Cass's future. Sign the papers, Eris. It's over. I stared at the documents, seeing my life dismantled with the same methodical precision Jonah brought to everything else. But I wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. I still had one card left to play. And if I don't sign... Jonah's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Then tomorrow morning, I release everything to the press. The photos, the text messages, the timeline of your affair. I let the internet do what it does best. You wouldn't I? You turned our marriage into a public spectacle, Eris. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The quiet, patient man I'd married was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone who'd learned to play the game better than I ever could. I need time to think, I said. You have until tomorrow morning, Jonah replied, standing up from the table. Choose wisely. As he walked away, I realized that my little joke at the altar had set off a chain of events I could never have imagined. I'd thought I was the one in control, the one pulling the strings. But I'd been wrong about everything, and now I was about to pay the price for my arrogance. The game was over. I just hadn't realized I'd already lost. The photos hit social media at exactly 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning, released with the precision of a military operation. I was at my desk, pretending to work while obsessing over the divorce papers Jonah had given me, when Madison's gasp made me look up. "Oh my God, Eris," she whispered, staring at her phone. "Oh my God." The images were everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the local gossip blogs that had been following my story since the wedding video went viral. Professional quality photographs of me and Silas entering his apartment building, kissing in his car, holding hands across restaurant tables. The timestamps showed dates going back months, creating an undeniable timeline of infidelity. But it was the caption that destroyed me. Not yet bride's secret affair exposed. Married woman caught cheating with friend's husband. Friend's husband, that detail, that Silas had lied to me about being divorced, that he was married with children of his own, turned me from a sympathetic figure into a homewrecker. The comments were brutal, calling me everything from a narcissist to a sociopath. Someone had even found my work address and was encouraging people to call my employer. "Karen wants to see you," Madison said quietly. "Right now." The walk to Karen's office felt like a funeral march. Every conversation stopped as I passed. Every pair of eyes tracked my movement across the floor. I could hear whispers, see people pulling up the photos on their phones, feel the weight of their judgment settling on my shoulders like a shroud. "Sit down, Eris," Karen said without looking up from her computer screen. "I assume you've seen the photos." "I can explain." "No, you can't." Karen finally looked at me, her expression a mix of disappointment and disgust. "My phone has been ringing all morning. Clients, vendors, other employees, everyone wants to know about our resident adulteress." The word hit me like a slap. "That's not fair. My personal life shouldn't..." "Your personal life became our business the moment it started affecting our reputation," Karen interrupted. "I'm sorry, Eris, but we're going to have to let you go, effective immediately." "You can't fire me for this. It's not legal." "We're not firing you for adultery. We're firing you for creating a hostile work environment and bringing negative publicity to the company. Check your employee handbook. It's all covered under the morality clause you signed when you were hired." I stared at her, the full impact of my situation finally sinking in. Without my job, I'd have no way to support myself or contribute to Cass's expenses. Jonah had been planning this too, I realized. He'd timed the release of the photos to maximize the damage to my life. "I'll need you to clean out your desk and surrender your key card," Karen continued. "Security will escort you out." The walk back to my cubicle was a blur of humiliation. Madison had already packed my personal items into a cardboard box, her face red with embarrassment. I'm sorry, she whispered as I gathered my things. I really am. But I could see the excitement in her eyes, the thrill of being close to such dramatic scandal. I was no longer a person to her. I was a story she'd tell at dinner parties for years to come. The security guard who escorted me to the parking lot was professionally polite, but I could see the recognition in his face. He knew who I was, what I'd done. Everyone knew. My phone had been buzzing constantly since the photos were released, but I'd been afraid to look at it. Now, sitting in my car in the parking lot of my former workplace, I finally checked my messages. 17 missed calls from reporters, 43 text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, most of them cruel and threatening. 3 voicemails from lawyers offering to represent me in exchange for exclusive interviews. But it was the message from my brother Julian that hit the hardest. Eris, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom is devastated. Don't call me until you figure out how to fix this. Even my own family was abandoning me. I drove home in a daze, but when I pulled into my apartment complex, I saw news vans parked on the street. Reporters with cameras were stationed outside my building, waiting for me to return. I kept driving, circling the block while trying to figure out what to do. Finally, I parked several blocks away and called Jonah. I can't get to the apartment, I said when he answered. There are reporters everywhere. I know, he said calmly. I'm at my mother's with Cass. We moved out this morning. You moved out? The words came out as a shriek. Without telling me? I told you yesterday that you had until this morning to sign the papers. You chose not to. This is the consequence. Jonah, please, I lost my job. I can't even get into my own home. It's not your home anymore, Eris. I've already spoken to the landlord. Your name is being removed from the lease. You can't do that. It's illegal. Actually, I can. Check the lease agreement. There's a clause about criminal activity or behavior that damages the property's reputation. The landlord is well within his rights to evict you. I felt like I was drowning. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, but Eris? His voice softened slightly. If you want to see Cass, you'll need to sign the custody agreement. My lawyer will be in touch. The line went dead, leaving me sitting in my car with nowhere to go and no one to call. I tried my mother, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Julian had already made his position clear. My few close friends had been conspicuously silent since the photos were released. Finally, I drove to a motel on the outskirts of town and paid for a room with my credit card, praying it wouldn't be declined. The room was dingy and smelled like cigarettes, but it was private and anonymous. I could hide here while I figured out my next move. But hiding was impossible in the age of social media. The photos had been shared thousands of times, spawning memes and commentary across multiple platforms. Someone had created a fake Twitter account in my name, posting increasingly outrageous content that people believed was real. A local radio show spent an entire segment discussing my psychological profile, based on the altar video and affair photos. Most devastating of all, someone had found and posted photos of Cass, identifying her as my daughter and speculating about how the scandal would affect her. The comments on those posts were particularly vicious, with people expressing pity for a child stuck with such a selfish mother. That night, lying on the motel room's scratchy comforter, I finally understood the full scope of what Jonah had done. He hadn't just exposed my affair, he'd systematically destroyed every aspect of my life. My job, my home, my family relationships, my public reputation. Even my relationship with my own daughter had been weaponized against me. But the cruelest part was that I'd given him all the ammunition he needed. Every lie I'd told, every secret meeting with Silas, every moment of selfishness and cruelty had been carefully documented and saved for this moment. Jonah had simply waited for me to hang myself with my own rope. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. The caller ID showed my mother's number. "Mom," I answered desperately. "I'm so glad you called." "Eris," Harriet's voice was cold, distant. "I just got off the phone with a reporter. They wanted a comment about your situation. What did you tell them? I told them I had no comment. But Eris, honey, what were you thinking? That poor man and his children. Silas lied to me about being divorced, I protested. I didn't know he was still married. But you knew you were married. You knew you had a family to think about. The disappointment in her voice was worse than anger would have been. Mum, I need help. I lost my job and Jonah kicked me out of the apartment. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair. So you're taking his side too? A long pause. I'm not taking anyone's side, Eris. But I can't help you right now. This scandal is affecting Julian's business, and my neighbors are asking questions. I need some time to process all of this. Another person abandoning me when I needed them most. Fine, I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. I understand. Get some help, honey. Real help. Figure out what's wrong with you that made you think this was okay. The line went dead, leaving me alone in the motel room with the weight of my choices pressing down on me like a physical force. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to really think about what I'd done. Not just the affair, but the casual cruelty, the public humiliation, the way I'd treated the people who loved me. I'd turned my life into a performance, and now the final act was playing out exactly as Jonah had scripted it. I was alone, disgraced, and facing the loss of everything that mattered to me. But I still had one last card to play. In the morning, I would call Jonah's lawyer and agree to sign the divorce papers. I would accept his terms, take whatever settlement he offered, and try to salvage some kind of relationship with my daughter. It was complete surrender, but it was the only choice I had left. As I drifted off to sleep in that dingy motel room, I couldn't help but think about the envelope Jonah had given me at our wedding. He'd offered me a choice then, honesty or consequences. I'd chosen to keep lying, keep playing games, keep believing I was smarter than everyone else. Now I was about to learn that some games have no winners, only degrees of losing. And I was about to lose everything. The law office of Martinez and Associates sat in a gleaming downtown high-rise, all marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that made me feel exposed and small. I'd spent 3 days in that motel room, watching my life implode on social media, before finally calling Jonah's lawyer to arrange this meeting. Mrs. Vane, the receptionist said with professional politeness that couldn't quite hide her recognition. Mr. Martinez will see you now. David Martinez was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and an expensive suit that probably cost more than I'd made in a month at my old job. He gestured for me to sit across from his mahogany desk, which was covered with neat stacks of documents. Before we begin, he said, I should inform you that this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Do you consent to that? I nodded, too exhausted to fight anymore. I just want to get this over with. Understandable. As you know, my client is seeking a divorce on grounds of adultery and public humiliation. He's prepared to offer a settlement that we believe is more than fair, given the circumstances. He slid a document across the desk. The financial terms were brutal. I would receive a small monthly payment for 6 months, after which I'd be entirely on my own. Jonah would keep the apartment, the car, and all joint assets. I would have supervised visitation with Cass for 2 hours, every other Sunday, pending a psychological evaluation. This is punitive, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. I have rights, too. You have the right to contest this in court, Martinez agreed. But I should warn you that my client has extensive documentation of your infidelity, including evidence that you were involved with a married man whose wife is now also filing for divorce. The publicity from a contested divorce would be significant. The threat was clear. Sign the papers, or face an even more public humiliation in divorce court, with every detail of my affair broadcast to the world. I need to see my daughter before I sign anything, I said. Martinez nodded and made a phone call. My client is in the building. He can bring Cass up now if you'd like. 10 minutes later, Jonah walked into the office holding Cass's hand. My daughter looked smaller than I remembered, her face pale and confused. She ran to me when she saw me, and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Mommy, where have you been?" she asked. "Daddy Jonah said you were working, but you didn't come home." I looked over her head at Jonah, who was watching us with an unreadable expression. He looked tired but determined, like a man who'd made peace with a difficult decision. "I've been taking care of some grown-up things," I told Cass, "but I missed you so much. Are you coming home now?" The question broke my heart. "Not exactly, sweetheart. Daddy Jonah and we're going to live in different places for a while, but I'll still see you lots, okay?" Cass pulled back to look at me, her eyes filling with tears. "Like Tommy's parents. They got divorced and now he only sees his daddy on weekends." "Something like that," I whispered, hating myself for putting her through this. "Is it because of the mean things people are saying about you on the computer?" My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, baby?" "Kids at school showed me pictures on their phones. They said you were kissing someone who wasn't Daddy Jonah." Cass's voice was small and confused. "Why were you doing that, Mommy?" I looked at Jonah desperately, but his expression remained stone cold. This was part of his plan too, letting Cass see exactly what I'd done, what I'd chosen over our family. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I said finally. "Big mistakes that hurt the people they love. But you can say sorry and fix it, right? That's what you always tell me." "Some mistakes are too big to fix, sweetheart." Cass started crying then, and Jonah stepped forward to lift her into his arms. "It's okay, baby," he murmured. "We're going to be okay." "I want Mommy to come home," Cass sobbed against his shoulder. "I know you do, but sometimes families change, and we have to learn new ways to love each other." Watching him comfort our daughter, my daughter who called him Daddy and trusted him completely, I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just a marriage, but a family. Not just a husband, but the man who'd stepped up to be Cass's father when her biological dad walked away. "I'll sign the papers," I said quietly. Martinez slid them across the desk along with a pen. As I signed my name on each page, I felt pieces of my old life falling away. The apartment where we'd been happy, the joint bank account that represented our shared future, the legal right to make decisions about my daughter's life. "There's one more document," Martinez said when I'd finished. He placed a thick envelope in front of me, my name written across it in Jonah's familiar handwriting. "My client asked me to give you this after you signed." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, several pages long, written in Jonah's careful script. "Eris, if you're reading this, it means you've signed the divorce papers and our marriage is officially over. I want you to know that I didn't do this out of spite or revenge, though I'm sure it feels that way to you. I did this because I love Cass, and I couldn't let her grow up thinking that your behavior was normal or acceptable. She deserves better than a mother who lies and cheats and turns family moments into public spectacles. She deserves to understand that actions have consequences, that trust matters, that love requires respect and honesty. I also did this because I loved you once. The woman I fell in love with was spontaneous and exciting, yes, but she was also kind and loyal and capable of putting others first. I don't know when that woman disappeared, or if she ever really existed, but I waited longer than I should have for her to come back. The private investigator I hired documented your affair for months before our wedding. I could have called it off, could have saved us both the humiliation, but I wanted to give you one last chance to choose our family over your own selfish desires. The envelope I gave you at the altar contained all the evidence I'd gathered, along with a simple request: end the affair and commit to our marriage, or face the consequences. You chose to keep the envelope unopened for weeks, just as you chose to continue your affair, just as you chose to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. Every choice you made told me exactly where your priorities lay. I won't apologize for protecting myself and Cass from the chaos you created. I won't apologize for ensuring that your actions had real consequences. And I won't apologize for ending our marriage before you could do any more damage to our daughter's understanding of what love should look like. You turned our relationship into a performance, Eris. You made our private moments public, our sacred vows into a joke, our family into entertainment for strangers on the internet. So I decided to end the performance the only way I knew how. With truth, with evidence, and with the law on my side. I hope someday you'll understand that this wasn't cruelty. It was accountability. It was the natural consequence of choices you made freely and repeatedly, even when you knew better. Cass will always be your daughter, and I'll never try to change that. But I will make sure she grows up knowing that love requires respect, that marriage requires fidelity, and that actions have consequences. Those are lessons I couldn't teach her while enabling your behavior. I wish you well, Eris. I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for when you decided our family wasn't enough for you. But I also hope you understand that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The show is over. The final act is yours. Jonah. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face before I understood what he'd really done. This wasn't just divorce. It was a complete dismantling of the narrative I'd built about myself. Every excuse I'd made, every justification I'd offered, every way I'd tried to paint myself as the victim was systematically destroyed by his calm, methodical recitation of facts. He was right about everything. I had turned our life into a performance. I had chosen my own desires over our family's well-being. I had humiliated him publicly and then acted surprised when he responded in kind. There's one more thing, Martinez said, pulling out a final document. A restraining order preventing you from discussing this divorce or your marriage publicly, including on social media. Any violation will result in immediate termination of your visitation rights and financial penalties. Even now, even after I'd lost everything, Jonah was still thinking 3 steps ahead. He was ensuring that I couldn't turn this divorce into another performance, couldn't play the victim on talk shows or social media, couldn't profit from the chaos I'd created. I understand, I said, signing the restraining order with numb fingers. As I prepared to leave the office, Jonah spoke for the first time since bringing Cass upstairs. Eris. I turned to look at him, this man I'd married and betrayed and underestimated so completely. I meant what I said in the letter. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I also hope you learn to find it without destroying other people in the process. I wanted to say something, to apologize or explain or beg for another chance. But what was there to say? He'd given me chance after chance, and I'd wasted every one of them. Instead, I kissed Cass goodbye and walked out of that office and out of their lives, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and the weight of my own choices. Outside the building, a small crowd had gathered, reporters, photographers, and curious bystanders who'd heard about the not-yet-bride's final humiliation. They shouted questions as I walked toward the street, cameras flashing, voices calling my name. Eris, how does it feel to lose everything? Any comment on your ex-husband's statement? What's next for the not-yet-bride? I stopped on the courthouse steps, surrounded by the chaos I'd created, and for the first time in months, I told the complete truth. I destroyed my family for attention, I said, my voice carrying across the crowd. I turned love into a performance and marriage into a joke. I have no one to blame but myself. The reporters pressed closer, sensing a story, but I was already walking away. Behind me, I could hear them shouting more questions, but I didn't turn around.